From Dollar Tree. Good morning, everybody. Today we're talking your favorite subject, taxes. Everybody loves doing taxes. And our guest today is Mark. How do you say your last name? Just
Two.
two, just like it looks like,
Yep.
from Not Your Dad's CPA. And I love the name of your company as it is Not Your Dad's CPA. I think that's such a great name for a tax business. It sounds fun. It sounds like a cool guy that makes taxes fun and not boring. And I love that you also specialize, at least I feel you specialize in doing taxes for us resellers, where there can be some different nuances in our taxes as opposed to a traditional job in W 2 form taxes. So I'm excited to have you on today. Good morning, and good morning, Lucy.
Good morning. I have definitely got taxes on the brain, and we have a couple questions that we've pulled from other comments and whatnot. But yeah, it's time to start gathering all of that data up to do taxes, and I it's not my favorite time of the year. I don't like it. I'm trying to have a better attitude towards it too, because I'm like I mean I enjoy the benefits of taxes. I like seeing schools built and roads fixed and stuff, but getting it all squared away is often just difficult. So, good morning, Mark. Thank you for joining us today. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody about yourself? There might be like one person out there that doesn't know you. I think everybody pretty much has heard of you or seen you.
In the
You're
reseller
very
community,
active
yeah.
in our community. I know I've been watching you for years. Not like creeper like, but I've seen you in the active community for years.
Around. Yeah. Yeah, my name is Mark too. I am a CPA and I specialize in helping resellers primarily with their taxes and some bookkeeping and consulting. I started specializing in the reseller net area probably 6 or so years ago. And I'm really happy about it. It's a good group of people who are motivated and tech savvy and fun to hang out with and get to know.
And you
So,
even tried doing your own Amazon store the last couple of years because I watched your journey on that a little bit too. So it makes it nice that you did dabble in on it from like our perspective. So I like that you experienced doing that. And I knew you were going to be possibly selling your Amazon business. I don't know if you did or not, or if you're still hanging in there doing Amazon a bit.
Yeah, for now it's still cruising along, or I should say hobbling along. I mean, I did have a few people who were interested, but then my family left the country for a while,
Yeah.
and for now I'm just kind of sticking with it. It's so I do private label through Amazon FBA, so it doesn't require as much from me if I don't want to.
Did it really give you an insight, experiencing what we go through as a seller? Did it change your perspective a little bit on for us on the flip side?
Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, it definitely helped. I mean, I see a lot of different tax returns and work with a lot of different people who sell on, all the platforms that are out there. So I get a lot of insights that way, but there is something to be said for actually getting in there and doing it yourself,
Yeah.
and actually having to figure out what reports you're supposed to run and how to print labels and, you know, send payments to vendors or whatever. So yeah, it definitely gives you additional appreciation.
Yeah, I would think so because I know if I had to, I have done my taxes myself on TurboTax, like my personal taxes, and when I had a W-2 job, and that wasn't that fun. And I will say it definitely makes me appreciate the CPAs that can
Mm.
plug in the numbers, while the question prompting seems simple on doing something like TurboTax. Really, there's a lot of missed opportunities and write-offs. And look, you can save us money and sometimes get us money back. So that is something to be said for having a CPA versus trying to do it yourself method.
I want to share Mark's webpage really quick, and then I'd like to ask him to the
Mhm.
kind of say the synopsis of a big difference when you do reselling, and what makes that different from like a regular bookkeeping. Because I too started with I started with one bookkeeper, and they like couldn't grasp the concept of e-commerce. During the interview, they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah," and then it came down. They're like, "I don't know what's going on," and so it was a learning curve for myself. So this is his website. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste it into the chat. Good morning, Facebook people. And it's really easy, notyourdadscpa.com. And they've got all the information here. And you said social media was at the bottom?
I think there's a Facebook group called Accounting for Online Sellers. If you scroll up a little bit, that's linked to on there. Oh, yeah, you can get it there too. Next one. No, one more. Right there, those 4 boxes.
Yes, because you have YouTube videos, you've got Facebook group, inventory spreadsheets, reseller sources. You've got a lot packed into this website. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
So why don't you highlight for us what's the big differences when you starting an e-commerce business that you need to look for with a CPA?
Yeah, that's a good question, because surprisingly, I hear that a lot. People they'll start reselling and talk to their CPA that they're currently using, or maybe one that they're interviewing, about whether or not they can take them on now that they're doing reselling. And yeah, I hear that a lot, that they'll say that they don't necessarily feel comfortable with that. And I think it's just the uncertainty. I feel like if they knew what it actually entailed, it would not be that intimidating, because it's not all that different from any other inventory-based business. I think e-commerce, I don't know, it just kind of sounds intimidating, maybe if you are not used to it. So I don't know. But as far as so getting ready to do your taxes, or even just setting up your business and doing the bookkeeping, it's not going to be all that different from any other inventory-based business where you purchase goods and then resell them. So yeah, I mean, just as far as just getting started with the business itself, I think the first thing I try and tell people is just to make sure you get a separate bank account, because that's just going to make your life so much easier when you get further down the road, whether it's to help you prepare your taxes or just having your numbers separate so you can organize your bookkeeping better and see what's actually going on in your business. Are you profitable? Are you not? Are you spending too much money on certain things? That's the biggest thing where I'd start.
And some sellers are newer sellers, and maybe they started just this year and it was kind of like a hobby. I'm just trying to learn Amazon, and and some of them may have actually made some money and found like, whoa, I think I have a real business here. And maybe their books and things are in order. It's like, oh crap, it's tax time, and they changed the rules now with money being reported. I know you've made a video on that. So now I'm looking for a tax person, and now I'm nervous and I don't know what to do. So what would you advise that person?
Yeah, I would just evaluate your comfort level. Like if you are in that place, if you're a little stressed, if you have no idea what to do, it definitely won't hurt finding a professional, someone who's used to doing that, to help them, at least for the first year. And then if you get through it and you kind of have an idea of what you need, and you think, oh, I think I might be able to do this on my own, then I'm not opposed to that either. But yeah, just reaching out to somebody who is comfortable with doing your tax return and helping you.
So if somebody comes at you with that, like, oh, I did all this stuff and I barely kept books, you are willing to help this kind of person.
Yeah, that's probably how most of my new clients
Come to you.
That's the boat that they're in. And So, and I have like a tax organizer that basically like a checklist that tells you everything you need to get to go through. And sometimes it can be a little painful. You might have to open your bank statements and go through and like identify which ones are personal and which ones were business. But usually if it's your first year, you can get through it. And then going forward, if you have that separate bank account and maybe even some bookkeeping software, it'll be a lot cleaner going forward.
And business taxes have to be filed sooner than your personal taxes, right?
Possibly. So if it's your first year, you're most likely a sole proprietor because that's what you are by default. There's nothing you have to do to go out and establish or form a sole proprietorship. And for those sole proprietors or even single member LLCs, that business activity is filed just on a separate schedule of your individual personal tax return. So for those people, it's all just one tax return. If though you have a partnership, with multiple people, a multi-member LLC or an S corp, those are totally separate tax returns. And in that case, yes, you have to prepare those first, and those are due on March 15th. And then you do your personal tax return after that, and those are due April 15th,
I
typically.
found that out the hard way my first year of being an LLC. I
Yeah.
went to my CPA and he did my taxes, and I sent them off on April 15th with my personal taxes because he never told me anything. He just didn't even say anything. And that caused a web of problems.
Gosh.
Yeah, it's definitely easier to do it correctly. I mean, and it's not like you're going to go to jail or have huge fines. It just typically, um, you know, results in a letter from the IRS,
Yes.
and they're always losing stuff, and it's hard to, communicate with them. So it is easier to do it correctly the first time.
And I know there were some questions that people asked, Lucy. I don't have those in front of me. Do you have them? If not, I can pull them up
Yeah,
that you
just a
had sent
second.
me. Okay. And
Um,
do you have any bits of advice you wanted to offer while Lucy's pulling that up of what the audience should know about their taxes this year? Because there are some changes, I know.
Yeah. So for the past 2 years, there have been stimulus implications. So a lot of people, you would have to report how much stimulus you received. And one thing I saw a lot of is people reporting the wrong amounts. So that would cause, letters or just complications. So that was kind of annoying. But I don't think we have that this year. But they did change the mileage rate mid-year. So like from January to June, it was 58.5 cents per mile. This is for your business mileage deduction. And from July to December, they increased it to 62.5 cents per mile. So, I mean, that's better. We get a higher deduction, but then we also just have to break out, okay, how much business mileage did I have the first half of the year? And how much business mileage did I have the last half of the year?
Hmm.
So that, I mean, that's just a little thing, but that's just an example of how things can be different from year to year.
yeah, I have a mileage log for my staff, and I noticed the tax or whatever the increase, and so I wanted to make sure my paper said 62.5 cents.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we've got two questions that I copy and pasted from the other day that are I copied them into the private chat, Mark, if you wanted to read while I'm talking here. So the first one is tax question. What are some creative tax deductions I can use for my Amazon LLC that are often overlooked beyond the obvious mileage home office deductions?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you want to be careful with the word creative. If you're being too creative, the IRS isn't going to like that too much. But maybe like unique or uncommon. I mean, it just depends because for a lot of people, mileage and home office aren't obvious. Those are often overlooked. I mean, you might be surprised how often somebody won't give me their mileage, even though I ask for it. And then I actually have to ask for it again and say, hey, do you have any mileage? And they'll say, oh yeah, I had, 5,000 miles. That's basically $2,500 deduction right there. So you just want to make sure that you're tracking it, that you remember it. And then you have the home office deduction, but then you have two options. There are two different methods to calculate it, and one might be more beneficial than the other. So even if you're aware of the deduction, you also have to take it a step further and say, okay, are you aware that, there's two methods and one of them might be more beneficial? Another one, sometimes there are personal things we pay for personally that we don't realize might also be deductible in the business, like our cell phones or our internet. subscription, if we use that stuff 75% for business, then we can deduct 75% of that cost. So that's another one.
Softwares, the softwares we use, like Keepa or Inventory Lab.
Yeah, for sure.
My mother had asked me, she was concerned because somebody wanted to send her some money in Venmo, which had nothing to do with being paid for anything. And so she texted me, she's like, I know you know about this stuff because of all the news stories as of late, with PayPal reporting, over, what is it, $500? I forgot that total.
600.
$600. And she was afraid, was the IRS going to think that that was income?
Yeah, and that is going to be a problem. That they were going to implement that threshold for 2022, but they pushed it off to 2023. So during this tax season, preparing our taxes, we won't see that. But
It doesn't apply, because that does make it tricky. If I just happen to owe my mom, $800, and I say, hey, mom, well, let me just Venmo it. It's really not an income. It's me paying her back, right? So it'll be interesting then to see how that will affect us.
yeah, and it might change, but if it's a personal transaction, like if for any reason it gets tagged as a business, then yeah, it might eventually be reported to the IRS and cause some confusion. So that'll, I don't know. It might change again. We still have another year for them to change that again, but we'll see.
All right, we got a couple more questions here. How do you categorize fraudulent transactions? For example, an unauthorized transaction on your account. Do you just delete it? I'm not sure where that one's coming from, but
I'm thinking maybe somebody stole someone's credit card, how we get fake transactions and the credit card company then ends up shutting down your card. I understand it as that. I don't know.
Fraudulent transactions. Yeah, I'm not 100% on that.
Me either, because it seems like the bank and credit card companies reverse those off. So because
yeah, my knowledge, it would be reversed. So it'd come in and then just go right back out with a net zero.
Yeah, and if it's like if you're talking about your business specifically and there's some type of fraudulent transactions, I think you just deduct it. Yeah. Like it's pretty normal for like a brick and mortar retail store to have some inventory stolen, and they just write that stuff off as like basically cost of goods sold.
And that brings up another question. Oh, go ahead, finish.
In my accounting classes, they called it a pilferage expense.
The other question I had thought about is when there's unsold inventory that we've now donated to the Goodwill, or we've sold it at a yard sale, just that dead inventory that we don't know how do we write this off? What do we do with this?
Yeah, I mean, if you donate it or dispose of it or destroy it, it's basically going to be the same. You just treat it as if you sold it for $0.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no sales, but then you also deduct the original cost.
Yeah, that's what I keep track of, and we damage out. So, when you get toys back that are destroyed or, damaged, that's what I'm dealing with. I think we all are dealing with that here in January. The returns are coming in pretty hard. Mm-hmm. And a lot of mine are just beat up. I was like, I can't sell that. So they get damaged out and then tallied up at the end of the year. Let's see here. I don't know if you wanted to touch on this or not, but overseas taxes for VAs, I don't think there's anything really to do there, because I don't think we do any taxes for overseas VAs. It's just counted as like a contract employee. Am I right in that? Or
yeah, exactly. Yep. You pay them as a contractor and you deduct what you pay them as a contractor expense. Any tax implications for them would be, that's their responsibility.
Yeah, that's how I feel or know it to be. Good morning, JR. He has a question. If I purchase a gift or lunch for my employees, can it be considered a deduction?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that one is a yes. I always have to double check with meals because it seems like they keep changing it. Um, and there's something like it might have to be purchased from a local restaurant or something like that. But I think in general, yeah, it's always a good idea to double check though.
For those meal expenses that you can write off. If we take the employees out for dinner as a business meeting, something like this.
Yeah, if there's employees involved, it's more likely it's going to be deductible. If it's just you as the owner of your business, it's your meals are usually not deductible unless it's part of business travel or some type of business meeting where maybe you do have an employee or a customer or something.
So if Lucy flies from her state to Las Vegas to attend the ASD trade show, what part of her travel is deductible? The airline ticket, a hotel stay, her meals, all of it, some of it?
Yeah, pretty much all of it.
All of it.
Yep. I mean, and if you extend for a day or two for personal reasons or for leisure, then the hotel lodging fees for those additional nights will not be deductible, but the cost of the flights to and from Vegas still will be fully deductible.
So I'm going to fly in and take Tina out to dinner.
And is any part of our car tax deductible aside from putting gas in it? Because we have to use our car to drive around town to pick up inventory. What if I slap a magnet on the side of my car with my business name on it? Does this make any part of our car more tax write-offable?
Yeah, so the magnet won't make a difference. It really just depends on how much of your vehicle, like what's the business use of your vehicle? Do you use it 50% for business, 60%? So it's all about that proportion. And so you can either deduct your mileage, your business mileage, or your actual expenses. So you have to choose one or the other.
Whichever gives you the better difference on the taxes.
Yeah, ideally.
Yeah.
And because you can't, I'm pretty sure you can't switch back and forth from year to year. Like if you start out using the actual expenses method, you're supposed to stick with it. So you want to look at which one is going to give me the most benefit in the long run. And when I say actual expenses, that means the business portion of your gas, maintenance, insurance, maybe your car loan interest, all that.
Okay, I got to pull I didn't know the insurance one. That's one that I missed. So that is something that I did not know about. All right. Then I got to write myself a note for that.
So Scott asks, if you drive out of town for a day of retail arbitrage sourcing, are those meals considered travel?
If you drive out of town for a day
of sourcing, some people cross state lines. Like Lucy crosses state lines because she'll go to Oregon because there's no sales tax there. Is that right?
Well, and my uncles live there, so we'll go
Well,
down.
but I mean, that's a good reason to go cross
yeah.
state lines to go sourcing.
Yes.
Yeah, it might. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to deducting that, but typically when they interpret, when you look at like the guidance, they usually say it has to be out of town and overnight. Or overnight is the interpretation. What they say is it's the travel has to, like for the meal to be deductible, there has to be a component of what is it? Like I forget the wording. Something about needing substantial rest. And usually they interpret that to mean that it's an overnight stay. So if you want
I know when I worked in a casino, we were not allowed to be on property 8 hours before our shift because we had to have substantial rest before our shift started. Very similar working in a casino.
I feel like I need substantial rest all the time.
Right. Yeah. You got to stop for a nap.
We need to tell our customers that we need substantial rest before you message us in the middle of the night wanting an answer.
Yes.
That's in my policies on Amazon there. All right, Sarah has a question. Whoops, there we go. Sarah says, I have another small business online and taxes are collected from various states by the company. I know Amazon collects taxes from the buyer's customers. Do we have to report any of those taxes paid by customers in various states?
Hmm. Um, yeah. So if you are collecting, well, sales tax is, I don't know. It's like always changing, but typically, so first of all, you only need to collect sales tax if you're selling locally or you're selling through a platform that doesn't collect it for you. Like most of them do now, eBay, Amazon, Mercari, like Poshmark, they all collect sales tax. They take care of that for us. But if for some reason we're responsible for it, like if I have a Shopify store, typically I only need to collect sales tax on the sales to customers who live in my state, where I have it, or in states where I have a physical presence. Also, customers in states where I have an economic presence, and there's these economic thresholds, and usually it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that one usually often doesn't apply for smaller sellers. But yeah, usually the only place I have a physical presence is where I live, where I operate my business. If I have an employee in another state or a warehouse in another state, then I might have to collect sales tax to customers in those states. So assuming that's the case in this question, because she said she's collecting sales tax in multiple states.
And she may think she's collecting it when in actuality, the platform that she's selling on is collecting it, such as Amazon or eBay. And I once wondered about that myself. So I think that's why the question, I believe that's how she's asking it. So if Amazon's collecting the sales tax in all of these states, is she responsible for that?
Yeah, and if that's the case, no, because they collect it and they remit it and they take care of the filings, so you don't have to do any of that. So I would just not worry about it.
Yeah, and I learned that because I did know that I was responsible for the sales tax in the state in which I reside or where my LLC is at, and I had for 3 years been paying quarterly that sales tax to my state. Not realizing that really Amazon was remitting that. I ended up on the phone with the sales tax department here in my state. She says, "Oh no, you don't have to do that." And in fact, recently Lucy just submitted several years of receipts to her state and was able to be reimbursed for those sales taxes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Washington came out, or maybe it's just new to me, I'm not sure, but for places that I've paid sales tax at, that they didn't give me tax exempt, and it was for resale, and I paid on this, I basically double paid in sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
They are allowing me to go in and amend, and I got 2018 done. Now I'm working on 2019, but I've got about 5 years of paperwork to get through. But just for 2018, it was over $4,500 in sales tax that I'm getting back. So
wow, that's great.
Cha-ching. Yeah. Lucy's definitely taking me out to dinner, Mark, when she comes to town.
Yeah.
So it does look like we answered Sarah's question. She says thank you. And Scott is piggybacking off of Sarah's question. And he says, when reporting our sales taxes to the state, monthly, quarterly, etc., do we report the taxes collected by third parties or we just report zero? And I think that we already answered that.
Yeah. So in some cases, if you work with a wholesaler or a vendor, in order to avoid paying sales tax on the purchase of your inventory, typically you have to give them a reseller certificate or show them proof that you're registered to collect sales tax. And if you are registered with a sales tax permit, then your state is going to expect you to file sales tax returns. So that just creates like a hoop you have to jump through, because even if eBay is collecting the sales tax for you, your state is still going to expect you to file a sales tax return. if you have a sales tax permit for the purpose of avoiding sales tax on your inventory purchases. So yeah, in that case, you would basically list 0 on the return because it's already being collected and paid by another party.
Yeah.
All right. The next question I have in here is how are taxes handled for the North American Remote Fulfillment Program on Amazon, selling Mexico, Canada, and other international markets?
How are taxes handled? Yeah. I'm not as familiar when it comes to the international stuff. As far as I know, you're not responsible to do any kind of like special tax filings or payments like for Mexico or Canada. As far as I know, Amazon takes care of that. But again, I'm not an expert in that area.
We're just paying taxes for the income that we're receiving here in the United States, regardless of if it came off of Amazon Canadian platform or Amazon Mexico platform.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you'll pay income tax on all of it because you're here in the U.S. if we're talking about somebody in the U.S. But yeah, I don't think you have to do anything there.
Yeah, as far as I know, for the NARF program, which is North American Remote Fulfillment, I get like a tax document from there, but I don't do anything really with it as far as anything that I can tell. It's just like a document that says the sales were made there. It could be different with, do you work with anybody that does the European markets?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it seems like every year there's an email that Amazon sends out about France, like French taxes or something.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there might be some responsibility in theory there, but I feel like most people just ignore it and nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's correct, but that's the reality.
I know I've gotten that email a couple of times and I'm going, okay, I don't
even sell there and I get
France.
the email. Yeah.
I guess it's possible I'm in that international option, but yeah, my feeling is, okay, I don't make significant sales, if any, in France. And if they want to come after me, okay, we can talk. I don't feel like they got time to come after little old me.
Aren't you guys love watching about taxes? Isn't this fun? We're making taxes fun. All right. Sorry if it was already answered, but does W-2 and business tax return to be treated separate or filed together?
Yeah, I mean they're part of the same tax return typically. Most resellers are either sole proprietors or maybe single member LLCs, and they show up on different lines, but they're still part of your same personal tax return typically.
I think what people get most excited about with taxes is how can we save the money? So, right?
Pretty much. I have one last question on that other blurb was, do we need to issue 1099s for commission expenses? I'm trying to think what would be commission rate that we would want to issue a 1099, because isn't most of our dealings either with people such as yourself, which is service based, and that's a write-off, and we wouldn't issue you a 1099 because it's a contract type of negotiation. Same with VAs, it's a contract employee, so there's no 1099 settings for that. Maybe I'm wrong. Can you think of anything that's a commission expense for what they're asking about?
I mean, there might be you might call it a commission if you're selling on consignment for somebody.
Okay.
But that one I feel like is a little bit confusing because it's, even though like you sell somebody else's stuff and then you give them the money for it, but then so some people say, well, do I need to give them a 1099 because I gave them all this money? Like, but actually it's backwards. Like, you're not giving them money. That money was already theirs. They're giving you money because you're keeping a commission. So if anything, they should be the ones giving you a 1099. But I don't know if they have to actually. But yeah,
Heather is asking is Rakuten commissions, like Rakuten, top cashback, all of the apps for shopping, and we earn those little bonuses.
Mm-hmm. Like, will you receive a 1099 or?
I don't know. She was saying that she just kind of chimed in
Oh,
saying, Rakuten, isn't that a
oh, it
commission?
is a commission, yeah. Or I mean, even if you're paying a contractor, um, like if you pay a contractor over $600 during the year, then you're supposed to send them a 1099 typically.
Yeah, that's what I do for my packers here, but we don't for the VA because she's overseas and
Yep, unless
it's
they're overseas.
yeah. Um, Excellent. Yeah. So is Rakuten cashback considered just an income source?
Um, yeah, typically
I
that's
don't think
the
I've ever claimed my Rakuten cashback check.
yeah. It depends how you do the accounting, but yeah, typically I categorize it as just income.
Nice. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other little things out there for commission wise. Well, if it comes to mind. And again, if anybody has any questions, this is a good time to ask those. I poked around in Mark's website that I thought some things would be great to just make sure everybody knows there is some additional resources on his website you can navigate to. You can get a business starter guide here, 5 tips to starting your business, which I thought was excellent. We've got resources. You can download a resource guide here. We've got this book, which kind of was interesting. I went down here to here, and it's got a lot of great questions answered that I see a lot of times in a lot of the groups. How to keep your receipt. How do you track your inventory? What can you deduct? Should you register as an LLC? So if you're wanting a very specific guide, I think that's a great little book that you could get and have some answers at your fingertips. And then there was a spreadsheet. Was this the spreadsheet? I think this was the spreadsheet. Everything you need to know. Oh no, that's the book. What was there was yeah, inventory spreadsheets. So lots of good information on that on the website here that you could go and get for if whatever stage you're at, whether you're at a beginning stage or an intermediate stage or
Yeah,
a
his site is very helpful with lots of
yeah.
great content. And Mark also has a YouTube channel for those of you that actually have not heard of him. Go follow him on YouTube. He's got great, great content on his channel. And I've always wanted to, I've never signed up yet. I almost did, and I didn't. You have a tax academy that I had been interested in. And I know that people can sign up for that as well. Yeah, there's this channel. He's got really good videos for those that don't follow him. Subscribe to his channel. Poke around, see what he has. Now, one thing I'm curious about is a lot of resellers, including myself, have dabbled in crypto, either this year or the last couple of years. And is that something that you have a little bit of, no, I mean, not that you dabble in it yourself, but as far as your taxes are concerned?
Yeah, yes, I do dabble in it a little bit myself, and from 2020 to 2021, like 2 years ago, I only had, I don't know, less than 5 people where I saw crypto stuff on their tax returns. But then the next year, like the prior year, this past year when I prepared tax returns, um, gosh, I don't know, I'd say like maybe 10% of my clients or something. It's like everybody was, or not everybody, but a lot more people were dabbling in it a little bit. Um, so yeah, and I have studied up on it some, so I am somewhat familiar.
To be able to put it on taxes, because
Hmm.
those that made a profit, of course, they have income. And for others that have losses, I'm assuming that while that isn't fun, works in your favor for your taxes because you've lost money, not gained money.
Yep. Yep.
I have 2 questions for you. One is there any platform or e-commerce situation that you don't take on? And then the second question is, what are the top biggest mistakes that people make, either with their taxes or with setting up a business? I don't know, you pick.
Yeah, so most of my clients, I mean, if you have several million in sales, you're going to be a lot bigger than my typical client. I mean, I have a handful of clients who are in the hundreds of thousands of sales and a few in the millions, but if you're above 5 million, that's probably maybe a bigger firm or something. But let's see. Yeah, one of the most common mistakes I see is just people either not doing enough in the beginning or doing too much. So like some people, they'll get really, I don't know, excited or a little too, yeah, I don't know. And just, maybe they'll have heard from somebody that they have to have an S Corp. That's the best thing. So they'll go form an S Corp from day one, even though they don't have very many sales yet. And that's actually not a good move. That's going to cost you more money in the long run because it can be a really good fit, but not until you're, in the $40,000 per year profit range. And I mean, I see that quite a bit, or maybe even forming a regular C corporation. Sometimes people do, or forming their business in Delaware because they heard that's the best. Like these are all, typically not the right thing to do in the beginning.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen those rumors go around over the years, so those are very good tips. And it looks like Millie says, "Awesome, you have a new subscriber to your channel, Mark."
Sweet.
Where did the name Not Your Dad's CPA come from, or what's the meaning behind it? Was your dad a CPA?
My dad was. That's funny. I haven't thought of it in that context. Yeah, just I don't know. It just popped in my head one day. And maybe it's because of how I wanted to be perceived or how I wanted to run my business. I never wanted to have the typical office job or the typical accounting firm CPA job. It just seems a lot like too formal for me. I just wanted to be more approachable. Maybe, yeah, just be a little bit different.
I love the name.
Do you have any kids? Just curious.
Yep. So I have 4 kids, and
Nice.
yeah, we're in Michigan for 5 years now. We have been in Utah for a couple of years, but we like to travel. So.
Me too. I do have a question for taxes that I think some people may or may not want to know. So if I have an LLC and I'm a business and I'm paying myself either weekly or biweekly, however I choose to pay myself, does it matter whether or not, I'm trying to figure out how to word this as far as your income goes. So if I pay myself less for my personal self out of my business, so it looks like my business is more profitable, versus if I really pay myself a whole bunch and it looks like my business barely broke even, does it matter as far as taxes go?
Right. Yes. So it actually does not really matter. So you're because you're taxed on your business profit, regardless of what you pay yourself or what you take out of the business. So, if you have a $10,000 profit and you just leave it all there in your business bank account, you're still taxed on it. Or if you take it all out, you're still taxed on that same amount. So your distributions, they're called owner distributions. Those don't typically impact what you're taxed on.
We have a question in the group from Eli. When to switch to a corporation from an LLC, and what are the benefits?
So if you did switch, you would it's called electing S Corp status. You don't want to be a C Corp typically that's outside of what we're talking about. We're talking about, so you still are an LLC for state purposes, but you're electing S Corp status, and that's basically it's a federal tax election. So then you're taxed differently, and basically that just means that your profit is not subject to self-employment tax. So that's one thing we haven't talked about is like all the profits that we're talking about as resellers, not only are they subject to income tax, there's also self-employment tax, which is another 15% that takes the place of Social Security, Medicare. So with an S Corp, your profits are not subject to that, mostly. And typically that makes sense, or you want to start thinking about potentially doing that when you are in the 35, 40,000 annual profit range. So it still might not make sense, but likely it will. So that's when you want to start considering it.
Yep. I wanted to just highlight your Facebook page real quick for those that are maybe catching the replay or you come up with a question later. I always think of the questions, 20 minutes after these types of calls. I'm like, oh, wait, I need to know something. But is this the best way to kind of ask a question to you, or is there a better way?
I mean, this is a really good resource. It's a good place to start. I mean, if you have a question about my services or working with me, you can just email me directly. But otherwise, or just going in there and doing a search. There's a lot of good questions, and I'm proud of the engagement we have too. There's a lot of people who have learned a lot, and people who know a lot who also chime in.
Yes, does your company also offer bookkeeping services for those that maybe don't have bookkeeping?
Yep, I do some bookkeeping. I'm really tax heavy, but I also have a handful of bookkeeping clients, so that is also an option.
And do you have room for a certain number more of tax clients? Are you almost maxed out? What is your availability?
Yeah, I mean, I typically, so I was getting a little bit tight last year, but I do have one more person on my team helping this year, so I do have availability. It's tough to gauge every year because there's always people who stop reselling and they feel like they don't necessarily need my services anymore. So there is some turnover. So it's a fine line. But yeah, typically I'm happy to help.
Nice. And what do you do for bookkeeping? I assume you just get the books all updated, integrations with QuickBooks and whatever other softwares. For business setup, what's kind of the bird's eye view of a business setup that you do?
Yeah, that generally refers to just setting up an LLC for someone or an S Corp. Those are the two main things.
Excellent. Do you do anything with trademarks? Just curious.
Nope. I have only ever set up one trademark, and that was for my Amazon.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but I thought I'd shoot it out there.
Yeah, I don't really want to do that again.
They're a pain in the butt. Follow-up question: if you don't pay 15% self-employment tax, then do you have to start saving yourself for retirement, etc.? Otherwise, doesn't that 15% have some benefits at the end if you stay in LLC?
That's a good question. So if you're talking about the S Corp, the main requirement of having an S Corp is that you have to pay yourself a salary. You actually have to put yourself on payroll and take a W-2 from your salary. And that salary is subject to payroll taxes, which is basically the self-employment tax. So that's how they capture it with the S Corp. But then any profit left over beyond your salary, that's what's not subject to the self-employment tax.
Very good. Very good. And I love you have general consulting. If you just need to talk to someone, this may be the option for you.
Yeah.
I just need to talk. I just really need to talk.
I'm here for you.
If you guys have found value in today's video, give our channels a thumbs up. Go subscribe to Mark. And our time's just about done. So if there's any last minute questions, throw them in now. Otherwise, we will be letting Mark go. I'm sure he's super busy at this time of year. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you.
Yes. Yes. Oh yeah, I see you've got Yeah, I'm going to have to pop around on your website a little bit more. I know
You
that
said
I
great
was
website.
there a couple of years ago, and I know we talked a few years ago in email, but it feels like your website's been redesigned since I last seen it. Heather says, I've heard conflicting information with an LLC. Do you take a K-1 and applied a personal return?
Yeah, so you only get a K-1 if you have a separate business tax return. So if you are part of a partnership or a multi-member LLC or an S corp, then you would get a K-1 from those businesses. If you're a sole proprietorship or a single member LLC, then there's no K-1 involved. It's just all on your Schedule C of your personal return.
And for Facebook user asking if there's a replay, the replay is always available. I mean, the content is always going to be here on YouTube and the Facebook group where you're watching. It will stay there. And Millie says, thank you for the great content and resources. You got a new fan in Millie.
All right.
Yes. All right. For the Facebook user, I posted Tina's YouTube channel to watch the replay. And if you have not already subscribed to Tina, you should go subscribe to Tina as well as Mark. And did you just say, oh, Sarah says, thank you very much. I will have to check out Mark's website. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yay, Mark the tax man. Look, I'm keeping it fun around here because I'm the goofy one.
It's hard to be excited about taxes. They're kind of like, they're bittersweet because, I mean, we all, in a general general way, we all want to pay taxes because we want to live in a society and not total anarchy and whatnot. But they're really just, I feel that they write. One of the things we struggled with was TurboTax. They'd ask these questions, and it was, we'd read them 3 times, and you're like, what? What do they want? What was the income of the profits off of your sales for the second quarter of the da, da, da? And I'm going, huh? What? How do I even know that? I don't know what I'm doing. And it just got very, very intricate as I started doing basically selling on Amazon. I had done my taxes for years by myself. And then once we had some other businesses, but they weren't very complex. And then when you get into Amazon, it's like, oh my God, there's reports here and reports there, and it's not intuitive on what to pull and what to report and where to find that information. Just navigating their report system is difficult.
A lesson in itself. But look, with knowledge is power, and the more you know what you can do in your business during the year for tax time, this is so important. Like if you didn't know that you could be tracking your tax miles, well, look, today you just learned that. And if you did not do that in 2022, well, look, January is not even over yet for 2023. Start now. There are apps you can put in your phone to track your miles for that purpose, free and paid, or do the old-fashioned logbook in your car, or do a good estimate, right? But at least now you know that you can incorporate that. So, I mean, this is the great side about taxes, where taxes are fun. They're fun when you have knowledge of what you can do to set yourself up at the end of the year. It is, because it saves you a lot of headache at the end of the year. Because, well, I already have that ready. My receipts, they're already loaded up in HubDoc, or they're right in this file. It's ready. Because when you're not ready at the end of the year or at the beginning of the next year, when you're contacting your CPA, that's when it gets to be a big headache and cumbersome and troublesome and stressful. But where there's knowledge and follow through, right? You got to follow through on doing the things and having your stuff organized and having it ready. It makes taxes not so frustrating. That's my 2 cents.
Eli, sneaking in one last question. What are the main reasons you can get audited as an Amazon seller? Are audits, aren't they random, or is there anything that would trigger it?
I think it's both. I think they can select you randomly, but then they also there are things that can trigger it. And I mean, it's typically not what people think. It's only going to be if you're really, really far outside the ranges of what they, typically see. So,
in terms of like
if you I don't know, like if you have really minimal sales and expenses, but then you claim like $20,000 of mileage expense or something, just things that appear to be off. So those can trigger more questions. But sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to show a loss because then I'll get audited, which isn't the case. Like so many businesses show losses for years. So I don't, and that'll offset your other income you have. So I definitely would take advantage of every legitimate deduction that you have.
Right. Well, and having somebody on your team like yourself helps guide you so that you know how to be prepared for an audit, or at least not make a giganto mistake that would get you flagged. I've seen some people who have done some creative tax stuff, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to be associated with you. You know, they're running their own business and they're, writing off. Or there was one guy that does business around here. He has a brick and mortar store. And I said, I got to do inventory. It's the end of the month. I got to go, track all the inventory that I have in house that's not captured by Inventory Lab. And I said, well, what do you do for inventory? Does your staff help you? How long does it take? How do you do your inventory? Because I literally like print out my previous month and I go around and I say, yep, we still got that, or nope, we don't have that. And I update. He goes, yeah, I just kind of look around and eyeball it. I don't know what. That wouldn't fly with my, just wouldn't. What do you mean you just eyeball it? He's like, yeah, I roughly know the value of stuff here.
That's one way to do it.
Anyhow, is there any, I don't know, is there anything we should be worried about with being audited? I mean, I keep all my records and everything. I don't even know what they would, I've never been through an audit. Have you been through some audits?
Not too many. No, I think maybe one of my clients has been audited once. So first of all, they're very uncommon, and if you do get audited, it's usually not that bad. They just look at one or two things. They'll send you a letter and request support for maybe one or two areas of your tax return, and have you send them additional support. That should give them detail that supports the deduction that you claimed usually, and if you have something you can send them, typically that's the end of it.
Yeah. Nice. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day here. And
Yeah, we appreciate you.
Yeah, definitely. It is always nice to kind of know, at least, we may not have answered your question today, but between the YouTube channel and the website and the Facebook group, any question you could possibly have should be on one of those platforms. And if you still feel like you need one-on-one, there is a book. And then, of course, you can go and purchase Mark's services. He has had lots of great recommendations with working with him. From many people in the community. Highly recommend Mark. So you can't go wrong with hiring him as your bookkeeper or your tax person if you are looking for somebody. And I think what a lot of us are looking for is specifically people that have knowledge in the e-commerce world, because it's nothing like going to H&R Block or TurboTax and going, oh, I need to do this, and they don't know. They just don't.
H&R Block at Walmart.
Yeah. H&R Block at Walmart. I'm like, yeah, no.
You can source and get your taxes done. All right. I'm looking forward to working with Mark this year. So I'm excited about that. And thank you. We're going to sign off for now. So thank you, everybody, for watching. And if you missed any part of the show, the replay is available. All right. Bye.
Bye.